All right, so today we're doing a deep dive into something really interesting, the Australian economy.
Ooh, sounds fascinating.
Yeah, it is. But we're going beyond, like, the basic GDP numbers and all that.
Right, gotta look deeper.
Exactly. And we've got this academic overview that, well, kind of reveals some stuff that's, well, not so sunny. Some potential vulnerabilities lurking under the surface of all those impressive economic figures.
It's like, yeah, like a beautiful house with cracks in the foundation, kinda.
Perfect analogy. And one of the first things that jumped out at me was this whole issue of wealth inequality.
Oh, yeah, that's a big word.
The report talks about asset bubbles, especially in housing.
The housing market, always a hot topic.
And then you've got this, like, crazy rise in consumer debt.
Yeah, people are feeling the squeeze.
It all adds up to a pretty significant wealth gap. Did you know that the average property in Australia costs, like, 8 times the median household income?
8 times. Wow, that's a huge gap.
It's mind-blowing. And think about what that means for, like, younger Australians trying to get on the property ladder.
Yeah, it's basically impossible for many of them. They're stuck renting forever or taking on these massive mortgages that'll take, what, like half their lives to pay off?
You got to have ripple effects across, society as a whole, right?
Absolutely. It impacts everything, social mobility, access to opportunities. It can even destabilize the entire economy in the long run.
It really makes you think. Like, if we were living in Australia right now, what would we do? Would we take on a huge mortgage just to own a home? Or would we be okay with renting forever?
Tough choices, man. Tough choices.
And here's where it gets even more interesting. The report points out that Australia, despite all its wealth, ranks pretty low in what they call economic complexity.
Economic complexity, huh? Sounds like a mouthful.
Yeah, I was a little confused at first, too. But basically, it means that Australia's economy is super reliant on just a few key exports, primarily natural resources and agricultural products.
Right. They're known for their mining and, sheep farming.
Exactly. And that reliance has kind of created this pattern of boom and bust cycles. When global demand for those resources is high, Australia's economy booms.
But when demand falls or prices drop, the whole thing goes bust. It's like riding a roller coaster.
And it makes the economy incredibly vulnerable to those global shifts.
Totally. So if those key industries take a hit, the whole country feels it.
That makes sense. So, okay, then where does the government fit into all of this?
Well, that's where things get a little controversial.
Tough.
The report argues that the government often directs taxpayer money into areas like drug subsidies instead of prioritizing investments in things that could really diversify the economy.
So, like research and development, supporting new industries, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Things that could help Australia break free from that dependence on natural resources and build a more resilient and diverse economy.
But wouldn't some argue that those subsidies, especially for healthcare, are essential? How do we balance that need with, long-term economic goals?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's a constant tug of war between short-term needs and long-term vision. Do you focus on immediate relief, helping people who are struggling right now? Or do you invest in things that might not pay off for years, even decades, but could create a stronger, more sustainable future?
I don't envy the people making those decisions, that's for sure.
Nope, not at all. It's a constant balancing act.
And speaking of investments that impact long-term well-being, we got to talk about superannuation.
Superannuation, the Aussie retirement plan.
Yeah, and full disclosure, before I read this report, I had no clue how it worked.
Well, in a nutshell, it's kind of like a 401k, but on steroids. Employers are required to contribute a certain percentage of their employees' earnings into these retirement funds.
Okay, so that sounds pretty good, right?
On the surface, yeah, it's amazing. It's helped Australians build up a lot of wealth. But, and this is a big but, with the housing market being so crazy expensive, a lot of people end up dipping into those retirement savings just to afford a home.
So the very system designed to help them in retirement might be depleted before they even get there.
Sadly, yeah. It raises some serious questions about relying on a single system for retirement security, especially when that system is so closely tied to, well, a pretty volatile housing market.
It's all connected, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then, to add another layer to this whole thing, the report talks about how Australia, despite its history of innovation, struggles to turn those innovations into successful businesses.
I know, right? Like they invented Wi-Fi, but for some reason they haven't been able to translate those breakthroughs into, like, global tech giants.
Why do you think that is?
Well, the report suggests that it has a lot to do with the investment landscape. There's this strong preference for investing in natural resources, which offer quick, relatively low-risk returns.
Makes sense from a financial perspective.
Yeah, but it's kind of stifled the growth of a broader, more entrepreneurial culture. One that's willing to take risks on new ideas and technologies.
So how do they change that? How do they create an environment where innovation can really thrive?
That's the question, isn't it? It's going to take a conscious effort to diversify the economy, provide support for startups, and it will maybe shift that cultural mindset a bit, encourage more risk-taking and innovation.
A lot easier said than done, I imagine.
Definitely. But if they can pull it off, the potential is huge.
So to sum it all up, it seems like Australia's economic picture is way more complex than it appears at first glance. Like, yeah, the GDP numbers might look good, but underneath, there are these challenges and vulnerabilities that need to be addressed.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even the seemingly strongest economies have their weaknesses. And it makes you wonder, what can other countries, especially those facing similar pressures, learn from Australia's experience?
That is a great question, and one that I think deserves a deep dive of its own. But for now, that's all the time we have. Thank you for joining us on this fascinating exploration of the Australian economy.
It's been a pleasure.
And for our listeners, if you want to delve even deeper into this topic, we've got links to all the sources we used in the show notes. There's so much more to uncover. So until next time, keep those economic wheels turning.
And those brains thinking.
Exactly.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.